Sarah's on Zoom, so.
What is she?
Yes.
Jimmy just said.
Well,
no, that was about.
They say.
Yeah.
Melissa. So is did you guys get the go ahead and put quarters together?
Oh, not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, you know, it keeps being delayed a little bit, but sometimes we, yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
going to start? Everybody, we have a quorum, thank you all very much. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order right here at 10:01. And we're gonna, what you guys call the roll, who wants to write it down?
Of course. So Highlands representative.
It's not here, at the moment, although he said he was going to. I'm here.
Martha, Mid-Coast representative is here. Big Sur Proper Valley is vacant at this time. South Coast resident Sarah Harvey.
I'm here via Zoom.
And Sarah, afterwards, I will have the AB 2449 statement for you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Resident at large is currently vacant. Caltrans representative.
John O'Leary here.
U.S. Forest Service representative.
Jason Field, Parker Erickson.
CA State Parks representative.
John Hiles, present.
Mike Dimple, present.
And
Which one of you is voting? John,
I'll vote.
and which one of you is voting?
I'll vote.
Okay. I don't care, just when you write.
and Big Sur Chamber representative.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So we do have a quorum. And Sarah, I will just ask that you are participating remotely because of Highway 1 active closures pursuant to Assembly Bill 2449. And that you do not have anyone under the age of 18 in the room with you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are good to go.
Thank you. Before we even begin, I'm gonna take a moment. Rick wanted to say a few words before we got started. And they're hard to say, so let's get over it.
Yeah, I just want to take a minute and really acknowledge the lifelong contributions and commitment to issues surrounding Highway 1 and in particular Big Sur by Butch Cronley. He fought a good fight the last few years and sadly succumbed to his illness, and we're all acutely and painfully aware of that, and I know we all miss him greatly. Not just for his seemingly unlimited and unbounded contributions and energy and caring and commitment he put into everything that we all care about. But that, we miss him as a friend and a great individual. And I just wanted to just take a moment to, remember him and acknowledge his presence with us and his continued influence and legacy on everything that we do.
And I asked it because I have trouble talking about it myself, but I want to just throw in there that we get traffic data because of Butch. That's the reason why we get it. And it wasn't an easy push. So in this specific application, that's one of our few actual concrete pieces of information that we can contribute to the conversation. And it's because of Butch.
And Patty and Rachel and the CABS organization, and again, all of us too. Huge thanks and appreciation for continuing his work.
It's amazing. Half a second here. But that not being overlooked, we're going to go ahead with the meeting as we should do. And this is the time for public comment on items that are not on today's agenda, but which are relevant to our conversations today. So anybody in the public wish to make such a comment, knowing that we will have many opportunities to talk about the things on our list as we go through them. Anything in particular anybody wants to add? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and see if there's anybody on Zoom that has expressly a desire to speak.
Do not see any hands raised on Zoom. If someone would like to speak, please feel free to raise their hand or unmute. Seeing anyone?
All right, can we get those participants cleaned up so we can see if anybody's manually indicating anything? Like in real life? Oh, cool. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna not do that anymore. We're gonna close the public comment and come back to agenda additions, deletions, and corrections. You guys, do you have anything you want to change before we move further? From staff, anybody here? I would say that what information we have, the minutes and the agendas are on the back, if anybody can get those. And I would draw people's attention to an attachment on the email, which we didn't print out, but we'll show at some point. Which is from Sam Farr about items that are of interest to him from this committee. And so I guess it should have been public comment, but it just, that is written down, that is available, that is part of the record. We just didn't print it on paper. So if you, and we'll talk about things in his letter as it becomes appropriate on the agenda. All right, now we have minutes. Thank you, Aaron. We have minutes. And so now's the time to decide whether we're going to accept these draft meeting minutes.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes, but first, and I apologize, but who's responsible together at this point?
I didn't borrow the charger.
And I just want to commend you. These are great minutes. They are.
It's
You know, yeah, they're complete and comprehensive and well written. Thank you. And with that, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Good. Moved by Rick and seconded by John that we accept the minutes with thanks. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Any abstentions? I guess we should ask Sarah what she thinks.
Aye.
So we have no, nobody against it, so we're gonna go ahead and approve the minutes. So they're here for reference, if we can actually use them. So the first item on our schedule program is the election of a vice chair, because Katie Moon has decided that she'd rather ride horses than come and go to meetings. Can't understand that. So, vice chair, we need nominations.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and nominate John Olaynik from Caltrans to be our vice chair.
Anybody want to second that?
Does it come with riding horses?
Good, if that's the deal breaker.
I'll second that.
And, okay, so John Hiles seconded that. John, are you willing to do that? Sure. Great. Is there anybody else that would like to nominate anybody else? Or for that matter, volunteer? Sarah? No?
Nope.
Nope. Any public comment on that? I'm not seeing anything, and I don't see anybody even nodding their head on Zoom, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it back and say, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, Sarah says aye. Any opposed, no? Any abstentions? Yay, John, thank you.
Thanks, John.
I really appreciate that.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Just noticing like our roster list over the course of the last few years, when I've not been able to attend, I've had others fill in, and one was Darren Hill, another was Chad Stower. Chad's our project manager of a project, and Darren actually has changed jobs now. At the Bismack last week, I introduced Aaron Hinkle. And we can spell that later, yeah. But Aaron is our new deputy district director of traffic and maintenance and safety. So going back to, if you all remember Sarah Von Schwinn, when she retired about a year ago now. Aaron is our current replacement, so if it's not me, it will probably be Aaron on board. And if we have others, we'll let you know ahead of time, if the two of us are not gonna be here.
And I'm thinking with respect to the vice chair duties, that's really gonna be personal rather than more than positional, because that will be an opportunity to know who we're sharing that not having information. Cool. The new Sarah,
The new Sarah.
is he okay with it? Yeah. Super, so we have a next item on the agenda is a storybook presentation about Jubata grass along the highway. And it's from State Parks, and I guess who's doing that?
Hi, yes, I'll be doing that today.
Great.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, then I will share my screen.
And just your name for the minutes person.
Sure. My name is Liz Smith. I'm currently an intern with California State Parks in the Monterey District. And to help with public outreach, which I know you guys do as part of your work, we have put together a story map presentation using ArcGIS story maps that can be shared on any website or anything like that to help educate the public about Jubata and pampas grasses on our coast. So thank you for your time today, and I will take you all through that. So here, this again would be available online. You can at any time click through these tabs up at the top to navigate through the presentation. But we start out just describing what we mean by an invasive non-native species. I tried to highlight species that both local residents and tourists would be familiar with. So as an example of a beneficial species interaction, we have here one of our sea otters, a purple sea urchin, and kelp. Again, to make the point that native organisms in our area have evolved to have mutualistic interactions with one another. Then to introduce the concept of non-native invasive species, we have ice plant, which again is something that anyone visiting the area is going to see and potentially be familiar with. To express the idea that plants being brought in from other areas become invasive when they don't have the animal, insect, and disease pressure that they would have in their native environment to keep them in check and can actually start to outcompete our native species. And then we move on to highlight the beautiful diversity that we have in Big Sur along the coast, highlighting that this is a global biodiversity hotspot and that unfortunately the Jubata and pampas grasses contribute to overwhelming this native diversity. And again, now you can see we've moved on to the second item up here describing what Jubata grass is. It's something that anyone driving up and down the coast would visually be familiar with, but they may not know that this is what we're describing. So here we have an example, and on all of these photos, if you hover over the eye, you can see who's credited with the photo. It was a great interaction getting permission for all the photos in this presentation. Everyone was more than happy to share them with us once they realized what we were doing. So we describe it, and then it was brought to the United States as an ornamental plant and then escaped that industry to spread along the coast. And then we move into one of the features of the ArcGIS story maps, which are interactive maps. So talking about how Jubata grass got here, that it starts in South America. There we go. So yeah, there we are. It starts down here in South America, where it's native to the Andes Mountains. And as you can see, this is even the Pampas region of that area. And then as we slide, the map actually moves to the different locations. But then it was first found as a weed in the US in 1966 in Humboldt County, and then moved down obviously to affect our coastline. And now that we've identified Jubata and pampas grasses as something that we're dealing with in this area, we want to highlight why folks should be concerned, why it's harmful. And that is also because it's not only highly adapted to our area, but it is an apometic plant, which means it can reproduce without being pollinated. So any one of the seeds, as you can see here highlighted in the red box on one of these plumes, even without pollination, can go on to reproduce and become a new plant. So even just one of these plumes can produce hundreds of thousands of new plants, especially when you combine it with the windy atmosphere along the Big Sur coast. And here we have part of State Parks' cooperation with the Byways organization was mapping some areas along the coastline that have heavy jubata grass. And this is a map that anyone can interact with. So you can see red, larger polygons as well as points. And we do have map layers that have specific ownership parcels associated with them if folks wanted to search for specific properties on this map, but we felt that for public use, it made more sense just to show folks the area. But if anyone would like to have the map accented again with that properties layer showing specific residences and areas, we can provide that. So then here we wanted to highlight some of, again, the beauty and diversity that folks would find in the absence of things like ice plant and jubata grass. So we found some amazing photos of our flowering species and highlighted things like interactions with insects and other pollinators that folks would automatically identify with. And here is another tool through Story Maps called a slider. So you can actually take this image, move to one side, and you have the coastline dominated by jubata grass. And then as you slide it the other way, you see a lovely image taken by a local hiker of the coastline showing native plants like ceanothus, paintbrush, sticky monkey, morning glory, all things that we want to promote. And so then now that we've sort of laid out what the issue is, what's going on, what we want and don't want, we highlight how folks can get involved. And again, this is aimed at landowners, residents, tourists, people just passing through the area. And so we highlight not planting it near landscapes and suggest 2 different alternatives that have a similar landscape value, but are actually natives to the area. And so you have deer grass shown here in the background. And then as we scroll, the image transitions to giant wild rye, which is another native. And do also suggest that, these aren't the only options. They may not be appropriate for your specific area. Folks should consult a local native nursery or their agriculture extensions to make appropriate choices for their area. And then moving on, not purchasing it. So a lot of times for events and weddings that happen on the coast, pampas and jubata plumes have become very popular for wedding arrangements or other celebratory arrangements. And so you can imagine bringing them, even though they're not living plants anymore, exposing them to the wind like that can still absolutely spread them. So we encourage folks, if they are planning outdoor events, to leave pampas and jubata grasses out of their arrangements. And finally, not spreading it. Folks, whether they're trying to help us in removing it or they just want to collect it for their own uses, will oftentimes attach the plumes to the top of their cars, which again, although they are transporting it out of the area, the wind from the vehicle is going to spread those seeds very heavily. We also want to highlight that if you are on your own trying to remove them, the seeds can still stick to your clothes and shoes. And also the blades themselves are very sharp, so they need to be removed carefully. And in that vein, we recommend joining an already organized effort for removal. This image is actually from Hawaii, where they've succeeded in completely removing jubata and pampas grasses from one of their islands. This is a plant that has a low lifespan in the seed bank. So if it is mechanically removed out of the area, you actually have a really good potential to have it completely removed. And again, you can see here examples of best practices, folks wearing long pants, gloves, storing the plumes in trash bags to be carried off of site. And so again, if removed properly, it won't persist in the environment for a long time. This is definitely a winnable battle. So here we highlight some volunteer efforts as a great way to safely, for both individuals and the environment, remove plants and improve the ecological quality of the coast. So there are state parks volunteer organizations. There's a group called Keep Big Sur Wild that we've been in contact with recently. They're still working in the area and are accepting volunteers. And then also if there's someone who are a homeowner or land manager, then we direct them towards the Community Association of Big Sur. And then that's the end of the presentation. We're still looking at different places where we could share this presentation. That is the idea for it. It has our logo up at the top to show that it is official, but that it then could be shared widely online. Does anybody have any questions?
That's great. Questions from the panel. Steve?
How do we access?
How do you get it?
Yeah,
Right. So right now, Aiden Sarbeck, who you were supposed to originally meet with today, he is the owner of the content. So contacting him through his parks email would be a way that you can get access to the presentation. And then it can be shared online through a website or blog or other things like that.
what was his last name?
Sarbeck, and I can put his email in the chat of the meeting if that would be easier for folks.
We can get it recorded by the folks taking the minutes, and then of course we can share it in our documents as well.
Great.
Yeah, most of the grass that I see is not planted by homeowners at this point or spread by weddings. It's established in places that are virtually inaccessible. And I've removed truckloads along the roads, but can't get to those. Do you have could there be in the presentation anything on addressing the more established places and places that are inaccessible?
Right, with the very steep slopes and things like that. In Julia Pfeiffer Big Sur Park, Parks has started working with a drone operator who has a drone that then is keyed into what Jubata and Pampas grasses looks like, so then it can locate that in the environment and get to some of those harder to access spaces. Right now, 2 of our park staff are taking drone operators licensing training and exams, with the hopes that in the future parks can get their own drone to help work with herbicide in some of those hard to reach areas. So I think right now that's still in process. So we don't have anything that we can publish about that now, but it is something that we're looking into for places where individual weed crews can't really access.
Yes.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. Mike Harrington on behalf of the El Sur Ranch. And last year we worked collaboratively with the County Resource Conservation District and Caltrans, specifically Jay Carl, in furtherance of doing spot spraying for eradication of Jubata grass. And I just wanted to thank those agencies for their collaborative efforts and look forward to moving on with that in the future again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Rick?
Yeah, just a question for Liz on the drones that kind of caught my attention. Are those being used just to locate patches, areas, or are they actually involved in treating as well?
Right. So they are a larger drone than what you would see with people using them recreationally. And so they are equipped to actually spray the herbicide themselves. And it's something that did take some fine tuning, just because, again, you are dealing with kind of extreme terrain. But they are seeing that the more they use them and the more they use the programs, the better that the drone computers are able to identify the spots of the pampas and jubata grasses and spray them accurately.
Cool.
Rachel?
Liz, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to present this, and I wanted to commend Aiden as well for putting this together. The state parks has done a tremendous amount of work mapping and working on controlling Jubata along the Big Sur coast. I have seen the drone at work. It is absolutely incredible. I also want to commend Caltrans and Resource Conservation District of Monterey for doing their part and working with private property owners to do what seems like has been insurmountable over the last few years. And so from the community standpoint, what I see is that this is going to take all of us. It's going to be a collaborative effort. It's going to take state parks, Forest Service, Resource Conservation District, Caltrans, private property owners, and visitors alike. So this presentation is a huge resource, and it really checks the box of that education piece that we've been needing so badly. I'm really looking forward to reaching out to Jeff and Aiden and yourself to get like QR codes so that we can have this information placed throughout Big Sur and share that with the private property owners and the visiting public. I don't want to shine too big of a spotlight on the Forest Service, but we would love to continue collaborating and finding solutions to, what's going on Forest Service property. And would love to continue collaborating on efforts in the private sector as well on private property. So I think those kinds of meetings and those kinds of conversations here with the invasive subcommittee is where this can happen. And I'm really excited to continue doing this work.
Thank you, Liz. That's, Taylor?
Yeah, maybe just Liz, if possible, if you could share the link with us, we could send the link out to that story map to all interested parties at the BSBO.
And post it on the website that we do have. I would hope that we have people here who can help get this out. I mean, everybody at this table has been party to a number of discussions about this, and I know that C. Monterey might be able to help us.
Yes, they actually have a hand up,
Okay.
so.
Alyssa, go.
Hi, thank you. Alyssa from C. Monterey. Liz, thank you so much for that presentation, and I think it's communicated very well in the presentation. So looking forward to including that into our How to Highway 1 messaging to visitors, sharing with our hotel partners to let visitors know before they visit, while they're in destination. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And anybody else? John?
Yeah, I just want to thank Liz and all the natural resource program staff that have worked on not just this presentation, but the project in general. I mean, this has been going on for many years, and I think we've all benefited from the progress that's been made from the work. There's still a lot of more work to do, but being able to use this as a message to the public, I think is really like that next step that needs to happen. So just want to thank Liz for her time on this.
It is.
Thank you very much.
I would just add that from the perspective of private landowners, some kind of central ability to coordinate with other landowners is essential because it feels overwhelming, as you just said, everybody has said. So as we message, if we can talk about, I know Keep Bixler Wild has been a good place to send people to try to get their act together. Sounds like CABS is going to be able to help fulfill that as well. But so as part of the presentation, maybe we could even become a little more robust about how to reach out to organizations that are going to bring together residents and landowners to feel less isolated and overwhelmed. I think that's a huge piece here that I know we've been living with for a long time. I think Dan and Laura are out there on the side of the road pulling things out. People are driving by with them in their car antennas, and it feels really like you can't make any progress. So tracking progress and getting the word out would be helpful to me. So we have some way to go back to people and say all the work you've been doing is making some sort of progress. Those are two things that I always find encouraging. Steve?
Well, I want to just echo what everyone has said, particularly thanks to state parks for the work that you do, not only on Hopper's Jubata grass, but on all the non-natives. It's a spectacular thing. Wow, Elsa Ranch, that's spectacular. You know, in both the case of Elsa Ranch and state parks, there's been a thing where people think, oh, can't do anything about that. So you're both proving that yes, we can. Especially with Jubata grass, where the life in the seed is short, and so getting it out of an area means that those plants are no longer spreading in that area. Of course, it doesn't mean that their seed can't spread, but I, you know, it's a beginning, but it's a spectacular beginning. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I was visualizing when we were looking at the map of invasives, if we could potentially have a layer that shows projects, a map where projects have gone into effect or they're planned or something of that nature to kind of give people an idea of what's going on. Now, I would find such a thing encouraging.
All right, if I could just say
Of
one
course.
short thing, you were talking about, communication or connecting with the community. Most of us are involved with road and water companies. And numbers of the road companies have a budget line item in their budget for removal of Jabari grass and invasives. And so, I don't know, through tags or somehow to spread that word. And get all the road companies to give it a little more focus. And so people don't feel overwhelmed.
It's a fabulous effort. I would like to, at this point, bring it back and say to help me feel as if this group is doing what we can do. We did have the invasive subcommittee where people could meet more frequently and spread the word, and if they did get some new update, could make sure that they knew how to get it out. And so State Parks was the kind of, I think with Caltrans, was the convener of that. John, are you guys willing and able to continue working with that subcommittee, which included interested members of the public and other organizations as available?
For sure. Yeah, I'm committed to that. I would like to know who all was on that committee because I'm stepping into this new. So if we have a prior list, that would be helpful. And then I could help reach out and get the group back together.
If we do, perhaps Taylor and Katie, could you see if we ever got a list of that? We may not, but I do think you've seen here some of the people who may be able to help us bring people in.
Yeah.
And then that provides a conduit for getting the word out
For sure.
for tools like this.
Yeah.
So, I think I have that. Steve was, that'd be great. Perhaps you could talk to
Okay,
John
that'd be great.
and get that going. Fabulous. Yay team. Thank you, Liz and company, and thank you, State Parks, and thank you, the organizations that have been so steadfast about it, and thank you, Steve Beck, who's never stopped talking about it in the past 50 years. Because I think that's really a seed, as it were, that has made all this happen. Much appreciated. So I'm gonna go ahead and move us along because we have a number of things we'd like to talk about and so little time. John, are you leading the verbal update on regions? I know we had a pretty extensive presentation at the BSMAC. Perhaps we could expand on that. We don't need to repeat it for the people who can see it there, but
You bet.
thanks.
So, what was not able to play at the Bismack was a video just shy of 2 minutes that was this, in the world of a very active landslide, something that's about 5 days old seems almost too stale to show, but this is what I have, so I thought I'd share with everyone. This is, facing south. So we're north of this, just north of the slide, facing south. Go ahead, there's some sound too, so go ahead and play. Yeah, so I'll do a little narration while talking.
We have progress anyway, John.
We got visuals.
So essentially, as I've said, at the Bismack and this meeting and in other times at different meetings that, we're dealing with a very active slide. We are a year into it now. It's the initial phase of the slide. We were able to build drive our way down and build a bench to start doing a top-down approach to the slide. Immediately, even after the very first phase of the slide, it immediately became clear that this was not the type of landslide where you could take material from the bottom out. I think as you're starting to see the video kind of get more interesting, you can kind of see the reason why. The size of the boulders that are coming down, that there is just no way that, you could put human life at risk to be able to successfully do a, trucking out of material approach. So it was very clear for us, it was very clear to our resource agencies, it was very clear to all of our people we consulted with, who saw it firsthand and who are experts, the geotechnical engineers, and we've consulted with many, that, we definitely need to have a top-down approach. The resource agencies have worked very well with us. We have weekly meetings with them, and they, have continued to concur with the approach and the need to allow material to go into the ocean. And at some point, I think maybe you heard a conversation at the Bismack about, how long that'll last. We're still a ways from that, from even knowing. There's still a lot of work to do to bring the material down. So this work started in February, and then in August, above us, a secondary slide formed. And then slides within slides formed above that. So I'm not a geotechnical engineer, but I know enough to know that, we don't want workers or equipment below, the cracks. So after retreating above what we know, we knew that new slide was forming very clearly. And I mentioned that some of the team members we have been working on landslides in Big Sur since the 1980s. So these are the best minds, and they worked on every one. And for those who haven't been here and we needed that second opinion, we brought in others from other places to concur with our approach to what we're doing. So anyway, so for the months that left from the end of summer and realizing that, we had a slide above us, we needed to know what its kind of activity was, where it was moving and how it was moving. So we spent some time installing several different types of monitoring equipment to be able to know, okay, where it's moving, where it's safe for us to work. Along the way, we also were shoring up the road above us to allow our access and the access for the community who use that road to be able to get through many times on a daily basis. And then lighter excavation work then resumed. There are areas of the slide that are moving a foot or more a day. And that was my thing I had said even before this. Since there was, in some respects, we liked having that drier December to give us more time to get ready and do more excavation work. But then we also need the weather as well. So basically now we're in a phase of we're working with weather and we're working with our excavation tools to be able to if there's not excavation, that doesn't mean work isn't happening. Every day there's monitoring. A lot of work is weather dependent, of course. Today, if it has a rainy day, there would not be excavation work happening. But as soon as the rain lets, our teams of surveyors, using drones, using land survey equipment, are monitoring the node 2 or 3 times a day. Okay, is this time to re-engage? Safe to work again. There's no estimate of opening. Hopefully, because we just had a little bit of a delayed start to winter. So where we're dealing now with is we have our winter effects, and then days after, this is the type of thing we see. And then we do our excavation work, which, by the way, with this new bench that we have built, we're using equipment to push material right to the very edge. So imagine the equipment is drawing itself to right at the very head of the scarf where the slide begins. Then they load it, push it, and they pull back, and then they might do that a day or two, and then the monitoring happens to know, okay, how is that impacted? And inevitably, more weight on the top is creating more pressure. So the driving force is up and pushed down and moved around what is the resisting force from below. So that's the nature of the slide activity right now. We're hoping within the next few weeks, as we get through some weather, some excavation, some weather, and some monitoring, we'll have to be able to get some sort of meaningful update about where we stand on things. But at this stage, there's no date of opening at this point. We're going to share about regions. We're continuing to look at, we're continuing to question ourselves. We continue to bring in outside experts. We're listening to suggestions and input, from the community. We've heard multiple times the idea about explosives. We've looked into that. It's found itself to not be feasible initially, but we're going to continue to consult with others and see if that's the case. Explosives in this area is, we use explosives in this type of material to blow up a larger rock that's in our way, not to, let loose a gigantic, series of, a section of dirt or earth. But, it's one of those scenarios where it's very dynamic, and we're continuing to work, with those that we can. We were able to bring up Assemblymember Don Addis to the top of Regents. In fact, the picture you're seeing, this is what she saw as well. This is the real deal pictures of what's happening up there today, and this is what's the result, the type of material coming down. Which, as you can see, you can't drive equipment up here and load it in the back of a truck and haul away at this pace. Maybe sometime in the future we'll get to that, but at this point, at this stage, the risk is just too high to be able to. I mean, it's impossible. You see what's coming down here. We thank everyone. I mean, we 100% understand and, appreciate this is not just one slide. This is one of an ongoing series of slides that has kept the road closed for extended periods of time. We had a meeting last week with the businesses, the hotel owners, the community members of south of Regents. So it was a nice event we had in San Simeon. I think probably everyone is really attuned to the impact and the economic impact here up north. Their impact is great as well. Some businesses have reported they're running about, 70 to 80% down of what they normally would. So the intent of the meeting, C. Monterey was able to attend that as well, along with Visit Slow, was it really, I mean, even though ended up talking a lot about what I just talked now, it ended up being a great opportunity for hotel businesses and owners from the north and the south to share with each other's the experiences of how they adapt. Because the slides like these are gonna continue to happen. This is the most active geological area of the coast, and Regents seems to be right smack in the middle of the most active area, where there have been slides happening for millions of years. And so we are doing our best to maintain a small little ribbon along the western edge of the continental shelf of the United States. And so that's just a little bit of information I want to share. Happy to answer any questions or just encourage everyone to, if they're not already, to stay connected with our media updates, with our social media. That's how we primarily get information out, in addition to events like this and this night.
And you're having weekly meetings with some of the stakeholders who are particularly active in this?
Yeah, every other week to every 3 weeks, we meet with a key group of stakeholders and we rely on them to help spread the word, out, because this event, BISMAC only happens a few times a year, and everyone is open to getting our updates as well. Yes, we try to utilize the economy of scale of having key folks send out information. So if anyone is not receiving that information in one form or another, please let us know, because that's easily fixable to be able to.
I mostly get it from CAPS, so thank you, CAPS. I wanted to start and ask Sarah, because I know that we often overlook her because she's on Zoom, and it's particularly important to the South Coast, I think. Sarah, do you have any comments, questions, or anything else you want to add? Where'd she go?
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation and for the explanation of what's going on there. And it just seems like there's a lot of unknowns. So I did hear that there's no estimated date of reopening, and I'm just curious because I've heard from several sources now, and of course with these landslides, you always hear lots of things. A lot of people are saying summer 2026, and I understand there's no estimated date, but I just wanted to see if that like year and a half projection seems like it might be about what we're looking at, and also just wondering, is it just the top-down approach at this point, and then we'll just see how the slide behaves continuing that top-down approach?
So any date that's been put out has not been, from us. If we had a straight line from which we could estimate, we could probably give an update at this point. But what the reality is we don't have that. So what I'm hoping that we have in due time is just more of an update of where we stand on things and more details of our approach. So no estimate of opening yet, Sarah. But right now, as we continue to, we continue to consult with experts and even other experts and not associated with Caltrans. And they continue to reaffirm that because of the nature of the slide and the way the material is coming down, that we have to continue to bring it down. Actually, I think if some might remember that when we started, it was kind of interesting. We knew that the equipment, when we got the equipment there and started, the equipment was not making its way back up to leave. It would also have to come down as well. So we just continue to have to pivot and monitor, and we are looking at different technologies and ways to innovate and to assist. But that's and I'm happy to share any details as we can available that. But thank you, Sarah.
Is that what you wanted to know, not what you wanted to hear, Sarah? You froze up for a second. Are you still there? Anything else you wanted to follow up on?
No, sorry, my computer froze for just a moment, but I don't think I have any other questions at this point, just because it seems like it's a force of nature that's largely out of our control. So I just appreciate all the work that you're doing, and thank you for keeping us updated. And I look forward to hearing any future updates as they come. But in the meantime, thank you.
Okay, great. Rick?
From the business community perspective, I just want to, thank Caltrans for regular updates. That's much appreciated. And regarding the messaging, I know this is happening, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to emphasize from the outreach to the Chamber of Commerce. It is the only outreach we receive from the traveling public is questions about the highway, and in particular, there seems to be a lot of confusion, and that's often, the emails are often prefaced with, I've looked at websites, this website, that website, and I'm still really confused. I have no idea what the status of Highway 1 is to get through Big Sur. And so I know you include in your messaging that, the Big Sur is still open and what you can do. And this is maybe, I haven't seen recent messaging from CMON or from CAPS, but if there's any way that, the accessible portion of the messaging can be highlighted a little bit more as this closure continues, overall closure over 2 years now, the impact continues to grow with the business community. And so, that's impacting jobs and shifts and hours. And so, and I don't have the answers here. If we can all just keep that in mind, that still is a real current and ongoing confusion about the status of the highway. If there's any way that collectively we can make that more clear, that would be great.
It's funny, like everything is so dynamic because as we talk about even like our signage, when you have an initial closure, it's really important to be very clear, road closed. And we had multiple signs, road closed, because in the very beginning, even the times that I came down and visited the site, we were stopping people in the closure area, saying, you're in a closed area, you need to turn around. See, and then we get reports from CFB, we get people getting into the closure area and they realize they can't go any further, so they get out and speed to get their way out. So, I feel like the road closed piece has definitely served its purpose, and we've pivoted actually to trying to now emphasize more positive. Business is open, and we've done that in the South as well. I wish I could say in our press release that the River Inn has the best tuna melt, seafood salad, and iced tea I've ever had. Right.
See Monterey can say that.
Yeah, see Monterey can say that. I can't say that. But anyway, the point is we all get to work together and sharing and being part of that positive message. What is available, what's open.
I want to follow up on that because I had an interesting experience the other day talking to someone in Monterey who said they had gone down to Big Sur and then there was a sign that said there was road construction on the bridge at Rocky Creek and they turned around thinking they couldn't get on that. So
yeah, that is an additional complication to this whole thing is the dynamic nature of overnight closures at Rocky Creek, and people are seeing that both online and on the ground, and it's just adding to the confusion and what's to be done about that.
Fortunately, those are there is one coming up next week, of course, this week, this Friday night. There is another closure overnight, but hopefully going forward, those will be very.
There is confusion there, and I mean, I don't know what there is to do about it, but it's something to put your mind around and say, that is not the place where the road is closed. And how those of us who live there, maybe that's obvious, but I'm telling you, it's not. Mary?
I just wanted to flag that Alyssa has a hand up and comment.
And John, is that Friday night or is that tomorrow night? I thought it was the 6th.
So it was initially the 6th. And then because of the rain that we're having now, they can't do the work.
Okay,
So
got it.
our release is the beginning of this week and messaging went out for Friday night.
I know you're giving as much notice as you can, but reservations are further than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still the same timeline. It's still 10 PM to 6 AM. So.
All right, thanks.
Alyssa, I'm glad you have a representative in the room. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the sort of messaging. Monterey has kind of shifted to a how to Highway 1 messaging. It's a long-term shift to help communicate the ease and options of a Big Sur, visit. So we're not talking about road being open, closed. It's open. There is a section, you know, that you can't access, but it's open. And so that's part of the key message. It's open to make sure you plan your trip like a pro, offering itineraries, you know, showcasing what to do in Big Sur, hike, stays, must visit stops, and how to travel responsibly. So we've been working with media, our travel trade, but I think to the point that's been mentioned a few times is the confusion. You know, we'll work on developing some updated materials for in-destination visitors, just to kind of help alleviate that confusion. But I hear you guys. Thank you for your comments.
Hey, Alyssa, could you send me a link to that page? Shoot me an email or something so that I can include that in the chamber messaging.
Absolutely. I have a whole presentation on it. I'll send it over.
Thank you.
And Sarah, you had your hand up again? Is that old or new?
I think you're muted if you're talking.
I'm not
Sarah.
hearing you.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, as far as the businesses are concerned, one sorry, I thought that I was frozen. That I've heard from the Gorda owner at Gorda store is it might be helpful to have a road closed sign right at Gorda. And then that way, the people who are traveling through are more likely to stop at their store and offer their business because currently we have one of the road closure signs located at Ragged Point, and then we have another road closure sign located right at Jade Cove on that straightaway. And he noted that if that road closure sign that's located at Jade Cove were to be moved directly after Gorda, that might encourage people to go into the store and purchase things and possibly even stay at the hotel. So I think that could be a helpful small change, especially if we're looking at a much longer road closure that could positively impact their business. So that's all I wanted to say.
One question, Sarah, was there are additional businesses north of the Gorda store that are accessible, but also not accessible from the north? So
Right.
I would, messaging could be something along road closed X miles ahead and something that doesn't cut out those businesses from that.
That plays into it, yeah.
Yeah, so-
We have our mileage markers, the one at Ragged Point, we heard from, I forget her last name, but Mary from the Golden Door area. And we turned off one sign at Ragged Point, you know, because that seemed to be the turn for people getting past Ragged Point, and we modified, we turned that sign off. But we still have to have we still have to have some signs so people know, you know, there's a point. And then even if folks could turn on Osmeo Ferguson, that's not for all users either too. So it's just trying to really just be very flexible and being adaptable in our approach, which we've tried to do with this sign. But thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And adaptation and communication are very close. I want to take another tack. I think that what I'm hearing is that the business community is having good ongoing conversations with everybody involved. I just want to, and I know CAPS does this, but I just want to stress that this period of time is long enough that it's making an incredible impact on the community because it's no longer tied together in the way that we've counted upon, including who works where, what services are delivered where and how, who people look to as their ongoing permanent community. So for me, I don't want to overlook the impact on the community and the residents and the folks who live here as we go forward as well, and think of ways to continue to provide that connectiveness that we all value so much. I feel like the South Coast has been cut off from me in a way that I'm totally not used to, and it is an impact in my life. And that being said, one of the other efforts that's going on at this exact same time is the ongoing update to the Big Sur land use plan. And that is being, in my view, at the moment, the lens that we're getting to look at it is heavily influenced by what appears to be a new normal, but in fact is inimical with what this organization was created to attend to, which is the fact that this is a byway for the traveling public to drive through recreationally and enjoy what we have to offer as they drive through. And that is seen in the land use plan and subsequently in the CHMP, which is a Caltrans implementation of the land use plan in this difficult situation. As the most egalitarian and most widespread way to provide access to what is special about Big Sur. Right now, and for the past 2 years, that hasn't been able to be happening. So instead of looking at this throughput, we're looking at destination uses. Very different loads on the infrastructure, very different experience for the traveling public. We're seeing pivots and shifts about how people offer experiences to adapt to this that are subsequently being seen as a new enough normal to address overall policy, which is fundamental to the land use plan and to the coast highway management plan. So I'm not saying this because I have an answer. I want to highlight it because I think it's really important as we go forward and think that we think on both planes. Obviously, they're going to continue to be closures, but this organization has to think about the times when we're not closed and how the road is going to continue to be in and of itself the experience for the people who come through in the numbers of the millions as opposed to the thousands that can experience on the ground destination activities. So even if we get 1 million people who come and stay in a hotel or who go on a hike, and I think that's a high number, that is really nowhere near the number of people who experience the ride through in the car when the road's open. So just trying to make sure we stay clear on that difference. It's not the same, and to make a permanent change based on a temporary condition in these documents that have a lifespan of 20, 30, 40 years, shouldn't be done lightly, I think. That's it. Anybody else? Thank you, John. I know you go over this all the time and everybody has bright ideas that they think nobody's ever thought of before. I know I'm just guilty of that as everybody, and I appreciate your patience and I really appreciate the engagement. And I think if we could do anything at all here, we can continue to say, this is happening. Here's somebody you can get in touch with. Here are some other people who are party to these discussions. I know there was I got a bunch of letters about signage on the South Coast prior to this meeting. All of a sudden, nothing after the meeting. So I have to assume that some progress was made with the folks who were concerned. So I appreciate that. There's nothing else on that item. Again, John, we want to just go ahead and we kind of touched on it, but is there anything you want to say about Rocky Creek that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, we did touch on it a little bit. So Rock Creek is going well, and we were going to have a closure tomorrow, but instead it would now be Friday night, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We had to delay the day for the weather, and the intent is to implement the lane shift onto the new structure. And so, and then we'll continue after that. So we're still on target with our schedule later this summer for, our opening. And it'd be nice to, there's work that's still happening all around, but as far as getting, both lanes open, that's our goal right now.
Thanks. Anybody? I do have one comment. Oh, sorry, Laura, I'll get back to it. And my comment is that the railing thing, which everybody knows is a personal thing of mine, it's a really good demonstration of what the different kinds of railings that are in play do and how they perform with respect to their influence on the experience. Because the new railings equivalent to those on the viaduct and the old railings that were original to the bridge are in very close proximity. So I really want to recommend people take this opportunity to look at that contrast and process it, think what they say. I believe it changes the experience from a vertical openness to a horizontal experience with lines through it. Just aesthetically speaking, I completely understand the structural stuff. It's just an opportunity because it's an actual thing actually in existence on the ground. So we're not talking about drawings, which I think some of us process differently as we go through it. Laura?
Thanks. This really isn't about the work that's being done, which is going along really well. And we see those folks almost every day, and they're just great. And this is a little premature, but I looked at the Byways meeting schedule, and with the predicted opening date of summer and the next meeting here in June, I just wanted to mention here that I know that the progress that was made at the bridge to manage traffic was very artfully done as an emergency measure tied to while the Rocky Creek work was being done. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't flat-footed on that, and that strategies are being worked on now to figure out how that is going to continue in place, either using the data collection that CAP has been producing or others to show that this has been an improvement. Anything you want from the community down there to help confirm it's not perfect. We still have illegal parking, but it's certainly better, so that that stays in place once the road is completed.
If there's not any further hands up or further comments, that's an excellent segue into the, Steve, I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanna comment on, the person dealing with northbound traffic. Who is changing the sign back and forth. This woman is such a delight.
She really is. We all like her a lot.
Smile for you.
Yeah.
She needs a something.
Southbound's nice, but northbound's great.
Yeah.
I did bring everybody a huge box of Costco cookies at Christmas.
Oh.
But she
I
inspired.
hope that at least she knows, I mean, even in this room just now, that everybody kind of smiles when they even think about her, that she should know that. She's having a huge impact.
You can't not wave back.
No,
Yeah.
Can't not do that.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that because I so enjoy that. But as I say, let's move to the emergency task force. Marisa, are you still online? I can't, oh, there you are. Marisa, do you have anything to say about that? And again, we just had a comment about permanent versus temporary and any chances and ways to address kind of nailing the progress we've made to the ground. If we could include something about that. Mauricio?
Yeah, well, thank you, Martha, for having me. Just wanted to just say that, you know, I don't have a substantive update on the task force. It hasn't met since last November 3rd. However, you know, it's still, you know, our office is still kind of committed to keeping that going and seeing how we can use that to tackle on other choke points. We're still yet to kind of collaborate with the new and incoming, or the new supervisor, Supervisor Daniels and her office. We're still kind of trying to find the capacity to collaborate and kind of get this rolling again. But yeah, we're still committed to you know, getting that going. And if anyone has suggestions on who should be part of that task force or continue being part of that, please always let us know. And we're looking to form a meeting soon. But yeah, so I apologize for not having a more substantive update, but that's kind of where we're at with the task force at the moment.
Thanks, Mauricio. I guess from my own point of view, Laura brought up the most important point, which is we have a pilot program. We have some record of what's happened, which I haven't heard anybody say didn't make an improvement. But I would certainly invite law enforcement to comment if there's issues with how it's being implemented. So I think we need to, looking at the schedule, see whether we can start now on whatever actions are necessary to consolidate that. And I would certainly speak in favor of evaluating other choke points with the lessons learned and seeing if there's anything that we can do, and if so, what steps need to be taken to do them. And I continually nominate Silveranis for attention in the short term. It is different because it's entirely within the state parks or orbit as opposed to private property at Bixby. But I think we might have learned something, maybe, and how we manage that. The key here, I think, Monterey County Public Works with Mr. Ishii really came up with the creative solution with the wrapped railings, and I think that's something that may have legs. So again, task force probably is the place to do the further discussions, but Laura brings up a good point about the present schedule.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And like I said, I'll be reaching out in the near future to kind of see the future of the task force and seeing how where the direction will be headed. But yeah, like the member mentioned in the BizAC meeting, her scheduler, my colleague Diego, he visited last week, and he was unable to park at Bixby because there was a CHP officer and there was a no parking sign there. So it's something that we're excited about and proud about, for getting that kind of getting that going and seeing it work out. So thank you for the comments, Martha, and yeah, we'll keep those in mind moving forward.
We also learned something about the consequences. I don't know that they're unintended, but I think they're not unforeseen about moving parking to other areas, which may also be less than safe. So that's always something to keep in mind as we go forward. And Mr. Stevens, I see you nodding your head. Have you got some thoughts to add to this discussion, or are you just going to hold them off for the emergency task force setting? And I know there's concerns about people not being able to stop and enjoy the view there. Anybody?
No, I don't have anything to add at this point.
All right, just want to make sure. Anybody else? Rachel?
Thanks. I, as a member of the Community Association of Big Sur, well, I work for CABS, I guess I'm not a member. We had coordinated a volunteer effort comprised of local residents to observe what changes were happening when the K-rails were placed on Old Coast Road. And that observation project is kind of been completed for that phase. However, I still continue to get messages from neighbors and residents of Bixby Canyon. So since I've received these messages since we last met at Big Sur Byways org, I just felt like I wanted to share 2 messages that I have received in that time. One from a Bixby resident on a Monday, this was December 30th, between Christmas and New Year's. The entrance/exit to Coast Road at Highway 1 was completely blocked up by illegally parked tourist cars coming in or bumper to bumper with cars wanting to come out. We couldn't get home. We couldn't access our mail. CHP law enforcement should be present at all holiday times. And they also mentioned that someone had abandoned their red Jeep with flashers on right on the highway southbound lane just before Rocky Creek Bridge with no one in sight. So just as a reminder, this was a Monday, it's not a weekend, but that period of time between Christmas and New Year's is like a critically heavily trafficked period of time in Big Sur. We witnessed this in so many different choke points, but this was definitely exacerbated. And I also received a message, and I know we can't always have law enforcement there. Like we have to pay them somehow with money that we don't have. So I understand that. So I wanted to also highlight, one of the other Bixby Canyon residents highlighted that the cones placed at the entrance to Old Coast Road also help quite a bit. Sometimes when the cones aren't there, people are attempting to park right at the mouth of the road in front of the mailboxes. She thinks that specifically having cones in the middle at the entrance to delineate that there is an in and out lane are important. And that makes it seem more like an actual road to people whose brains fall out when they see dirt. So this just goes to say that this approach can have multiple prongs. We can have presence when we have the capacity for presence to be there, but also there are some potential physical barriers that could be placed in a way that is a little more aesthetically pleasing than orange cones to help funnel folks and move them efficiently. So Mauricio, I will reach out to you. I'm happy to stay in contact. And I'm going to echo Laura and Martha's comments that this was an emergency temporary measure, and it should be something that is considered as we as Rocky Creek starts to open back up and that temporary
Slow
measure.
down.
Yeah.
Could Caltrans slow down?
I don't think that's gonna fly. Just guessing.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate that. And I know I appreciate the efforts of collecting information sort of in a more organized fashion than just getting multitudinous emails in my inbox. All right, Anything further we want to say about the task force? I mean, again, I know it's like punching jello, we keep going back and forth among various issues, but that's kind of why we have to have these BSMAC and Byways organizations, because nothing happens in a vacuum around here.
Martha,
John?
when we get into the new phase for the task force looking at soberness, I'd like to be included in that. So when that task force gets back up and running, please keep me included.
I see Mauricio writing something down, that. Good.
Yeah, can one of you or can you write that in the comments just so I can get your contact information? Someone send that over,
For sure.
please.
Nods over here from this county folks. Super. All right, anything else? Seeing nothing, I think the next item here was put in and it was listed as the update on the BSMAC because we've changed our meeting times and the BSMAC now happens a week before this meeting. So rather than preparing to give any kind of input, we're looking to continue conversations that may have more to talk about than the BSMAC was able to allow. And so that's a pretty open setting for me. At least I hope that that's adequate agenda for whatever we need to do. Talking with Rick over here, who also attended the BSMAC, a couple of things that I wanted to mention, see whether we had further conversations. One of the items that came up and had some extensive discussion at the BSMAC was the news camera at Point Sur. So I know there may be some more people want to say about that. It was also mentioned about the sign project that Caltrans is bringing to the Coastal Commission in the near future. There may be some more conversation there. One of the public comments highlighted an ongoing issue. I've received correspondence as well about the North Coast section of expanded roadside parking in particular, but also trails and their relationship to the view shed. The parking issue I can explain a little more about. There was a lot of discussion about fire fuel management and some concerns were expressed about how that might impact the visual character of the roadway as people clear more vegetation and expose the visibility of more built structures. So that's kind of just rough notes that I have. I know several other people here. I'm just going to ask Rick, did you have anything?
No, nothing to add.
Anybody?
I have one,
Yeah.
Sycamore Canyon and Highway 1 intersection. I've been discussing about how that's sort of a dangerous exit and entrance. We're wondering how, is there any process by which Caltrans could do some sort of safety assessment on how that entrance and exit could work? How to make that more safe, possibly.
Okay. Make a note there. Anything else from BSMAC?
Good comment.
Yes, please.
About the camera.
Oh, I just want to get the list and we'll come back to you for the camera.
Whenever you're ready.
Anybody else have something?
Did you, sorry.
Oh.
We can start the discussion. I just want to make sure that there's any overall topics that we think would be appropriate that we didn't touch on in that list. Who?
Eric.
Eric has his hand raised. Oh, you're against a white background. Eric.
Thanks, Martha. It's a little tangential, but I just wanted to throw out that this was mentioned at BSMAC, I believe, but the commission will be hearing the Mud Creek follow-up coastal development permit and the Big Sur warning signs permit on March 12th. And I was gonna make myself available if we wanted to have any discussion about that today, or if people wanted to follow up with me. And then also to mention that public comments for either item would need to be received this Friday to get into our hearing packet for next week.
Fabulous. And I really appreciate that. We can get the comment link from them. They send out to our list if anybody wants to use that. We did have the presentation on the sign project at our last.
I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Right.
I can just in a round table make just a really quick mention
Okay,
to it.
well, anything else that we need to get to? So, okay, let's start with the signs. And this, everybody was here. I mean, I think that is in the minutes and I think there may be further information like the presentation that's in there. Yeah. John,
Like Eric mentioned, next week, we have a curb warning, we have a sign reduction project. That's, we're playing out, and next week it's going to the Coastal Commission for approval. And it's essentially, there are curb warning signs, but the bottom line is we're removing 34 signs as a net result of the work. So there's signs that are being upgraded and some posts being improved, but the real win is the sign reduction. So that's going to Coastal Commission next Wednesday or Thursday. I'm gonna do that day, but next week, as I mentioned.
it depends on what day we're hearing the, I would say I received quite a copy of a quite extensive letter from one of the Big Sur residents who also serves on the LUAC, although it was a personal letter. And the issue raised there had less to do with the signs than it had to do with the process. Because the LUAC was getting it brought to them this week, as opposed to earlier in the project when there might have been an opportunity to make some comments that would be specifically useful to the situation. So that's a comment that we get in different forms, different ways, and I would just bring it to the attention of all involved to say, it doesn't feel like meaningful public engagement if it happens at the last minute. It means people feel trapped into confrontational, critical perspectives rather than collaborative. So if there's any way we can continue to put into our thinking the idea that that collaboration is useful and helpful and saves time if we get it early, that would probably be very productive. So that was what I took away from that public comment. Anything else on the sign project?
I just wanted to comment, it's so strange, John, that here, we're reducing the number of signs along Highway 1 coming from Caltrans. And it's much appreciated. I just, thank you for keeping that on your radar and in decision making and hopefully we continue to find ways to cut those back.
And I want to just kind of mention, because it deserves it, is that from the very beginning of this Byways group, when we first formed in our very early meetings, and we're still like little toddlers running around trying to figure out, how we're going to do this. It was Rick, you were the one that continually brought this to our attention, brought it up. So we were able to take that information back and apply that into the development of the project. So
Yeah.
that's an example of the win and the value of this group here.
It is, and I just want to throw in there that the LUAC is not the same thing, and it brings a different cut through the community, and it would be valuable to do both at the same. And when you have a project that you can show a thing for, that's a good group to take it to. They actually have useful input too. Okay. Very cool. Anything else on signs? No, let's go to cameras, because there was quite a lot of discussion about cameras.
Well,
Steve's behind you.
and the specific part that was interesting to me was the idea that the information can be shared with this group or with the public generally, about the number of cars, when that's paired with the cab's cover. And then it makes me think of, if there was a counter just south of the Esalen entrance, because there's a fair amount of traffic that goes between South Coast Center and Esalen and people going to Esalen, if there was a counter there. So I just made me curious about, this is not a license plate reader. I don't think your guys is it just counts cars. But the information could be so useful. So we get something at the north end of Big Sur, something in Point Sur, and then something to the south, to see what that traffic flow is real time.
I always wanted, somewhere all the way south, like Ragged Point, County Line, and Nassamiana Ferguson. And that at least puts everything in a box. So I would put to you that if anybody's doing anything where we could get a count in those locations, it would be useful for problem solving. Did you?
I don't know if it now or later.
All right,
So it's just about cameras, yeah.
let's see what you took away from the discussion.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I've been talking with the sheriff's department, and some of those locations, all the locations that you just mentioned. Are locations that they're in like the early stages of thinking, could they do this? The issue is self-service, because the cameras rely on self-service. But I really do like your idea about at the closure too. There is self-service there. So hypothetically, we could look at something down there. AT&T, I have 5G connection at that location. Another piece that's interesting too is the cameras also tell you what state the plate is, and you can get that data, if that mattered to this group, as far as California plates versus out of state.
I think there's some people here present that might be interested in that. Mary's nodding her head. Yeah, Greg would be interested in that.
Well, no, I have comments about that.
Okay,
There's probably a lot of rental cars, but I imagine you could decipher something from the different states that are coming down. In regards to the point sur camera, we heard everyone at Bismack, we understand there's a lot of difference of opinion on the initial procedures and putting it there, and we took the input from everybody at that meeting, and we're trying to find a new way to potentially move that camera, but keep it in the same area, and actually, we'd like to get both directions covered, north and south, and one of the things I'm in the early stages of looking at is directly across the street. I was just telling John, there's I believe it's a PG&E pole just outside of the El Sur Ranch property. It's just on the shoulder, pole goes up, however many feet in the air. We could hypothetically, if we got some permits from PG&E, put north and south facing cameras higher up, not in the view shed, on the existing pole, and then get rid of the flock camera on the other side of the street. I guess I would ask you guys, is that something that this group would appreciate, support?
Seems like an improvement as far as
Improvement?
the aesthetics, yeah.
the fewer poles, the better, the more co-location, the better from the aesthetic standpoint. I also want to highlight the rest of the discussion, which had a lot of assurances about how the data and privacy would be protected and used only for the things that we heard about. And then at the end of that was a discussion from, I think it was a highway patrol or the sheriff saying, oh, and we can use it for a bunch of other things as well, which kind of muddied that water.
Right.
So I think it's important to continue to address the notion that everybody doesn't want everything known about everything.
I'm happy to answer any questions about that too.
And I'll start by saying, I'm a big fan of flock cameras. I think they're an incredible tool for law enforcement. And I've been involved in numerous in-depth, conversations about the technology and how they function, and the integrity of the flock camera is why I'm a fan. And I think when we start talking about gathering other data using this particular technology, I think we're going down the wrong road. I think we need to maintain the integrity of that tool. And that is, they're used for one thing and one thing only, so that we all can have it rest as easy as possible, have the assurance that they are being used with integrity and for a very specific and guarded purpose. And so, if we want other information about any of that other stuff, and some of that I know can be incredibly valuable, but let's find a different way to gather that information. Let's not muddy the waters. Let's not damage the reputation and integrity of this technology.
I agree. The cameras are intended to, like I said, in Bismack, felony wanted vehicles, stolen vehicles, Amber Alerts, or significant major crimes that we're trying to investigate. Those are the
Period.
That's it.
Period.
It does count cars so that we can see data in that regard, and that is there. Another piece I wanted to bring up to this group is that other communities, particularly, I know Laguna Beach, private business owners can purchase flock too. And in one case, I know of a flock camera on a private business helped solve a homicide in the city of Laguna Beach, where a waitress was murdered, and part of it was caught on one of these cameras. And those cameras can be shared with law enforcement by private business owners. Not saying that anybody would want to do that, but I wanted this group to know it's not just law enforcement. Home Depot has flock cameras. There's schools, communities are using these, private business owners, all throughout, and the network can be shared with integrity, like you're saying, with law enforcement for those reasons.
But it's a
So,
private business.
yes,
That's kind of, those are two separate messages to some extent. They do the best they can, but they're private business, so they can also change their mind. And be subject to folks who might wish to obtain that data for other reasons. Patty?
Yeah, I just want to, back up what Rick said. As long as, I understand the intent why state parks installed the flock camera, and it is an added tool for law enforcement, for everyone, for mutual aid. Again, back to the integrity that it is just going to do what you've designated, meaning that data isn't shared out for other purposes. That's kind of number one. And once the community understands that and can trust it, it'll be much better. The second thing, separate from the flock camera, but it's talking about traffic counting, is John let us know, Martha, a couple months ago, that there is an active traffic counter on the South Coast around the San Simeon area that we just need to reach out to request that data.
I'm gonna let Taylor talk a little bit about that, because we tried.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, we did reach out in, our communication from Caltrans staff was that it was available just on, like an annual basis. They didn't have finer detailed data available. So I don't know if that's potentially might change in the future, but that was kind of what we received.
I still have some follow-up on that, I just haven't. It's still in my inbox, I have to follow up on Taylor and our group's conversation, but.
We did file
Right.
appropriate forms and got back, which we did a couple of times to try to hone in on what we were asking, and got back. The best we got was annual data is sometimes available when the report comes out. And that was, we were hoping for better than that. Rachel?
I just wanted to revisit the flock camera conversation, and as a resident, I had the opportunity to speak with Kate Daniels as Chief of Staff, Kimberly, about the flock cameras. She obviously has a lot of experience when the flock cameras were installed in the city of Salinas, and walked me through the community engagement process that the city of Salinas went through to ensure that all members of the community in Salinas were aware of the technology, aware of the processes. They felt really good about what was being done with the data, and despite a lot of concerns. And I would really appreciate that our community have a little more transparency on that, instead of us just having these conversations in these meetings. Because I was at the Big Share on Monday, and everyone's still like, okay, well, I heard the story at Bismack, and that's really wonderful that it's only targeted to pick up or look for stolen vehicles, felons, Amber Alerts, etc. And then there was this really beautiful, heartwarming story of this woman going missing, and then her license plate information being added to the system. And it's incredible, and what an amazing accomplishment to have been able to find that woman within 15 minutes. I mean, that is so heartwarming and amazing, but it doesn't make sense to our residents, where we're saying we're trying to maintain the integrity of what this process is and what this technology does. And then, there was this thing where we were able to add this person's license plate number and find them, which didn't fit really necessarily into the ABC boxes that were stated. So coming from neighbors and friends, we would really appreciate a lot more transparency on this. And I'm not sure what that looks like, but that's a big concern.
Absolutely. And just, I guess the last thing I'll say to clear that up is that it has the ability to search for wanted vehicles, stolen vehicles, and Amber Alerts. And then in the situation with the woman who we found, where when thresholds are met for missing persons or a major crime that's vetted through supervising peace officers, officers can say, hey, this person went missing. I want to make a search. Then we can make an inquiry. We have to have a case number. We have to have a reason. It's vetted by a supervisor. There's a system, and that can be denied. The sergeant can say this, no, you're not doing the search. But if they come to him and say, hey, there's a missing person, they're suffering from dementia, they just left, their kid is in the park, they're in this car, I can then approve that and say, okay, this is a valid search. Go ahead and search, and then we can find that person and help find them. So there's that fourth thing that we can inquire into the system, and we've set up policy, department policy, and reasons for searches that can't just be arbitrary. So I hope that helped clears that up, and I'm happy to come down to Big Sur and do a sit down and speak with anybody on this topic at any time. You guys just let me know. However I can help get the word out in a positive way, I'm happy to do that.
Do you think maybe Patty and Rachel, Cabs might facilitate a community discussion and invite people to do that? Yeah. I think it could have hurt.
Okay.
Thank you. I see Sarah has her hand up. Actually, I didn't see it, but Taylor did. Sarah?
Sorry, I keep on not muting. Yeah, thank you. I first have a question and then a comment. So my question, I just want to clarify, as far as reading license plates, how exactly does the technology work? Are you saying that it can't read the license plate numbers unless it is in the system?
Yes, so the camera uses AI to capture an image of the front or rear license plate and then compare that plate against our California DOJ system that has those vehicles as a stolen vehicle, an Amber Alert, or a felony vehicle. So if I stole a car and I was driving around in a stolen vehicle and it was inputted into the system, the Department of Justice system, that information gets shared with Flock from DOJ on the stolen vehicle. And when that plate passes the camera, you get the hit. So does that help clear that up?
Yeah, thank you. So my comment is, I think that sounds great in that usage. And I think, that could obviously be a huge benefit. And my concern is for members of the community, particularly marginalized members of our community right now that are facing a lot of uncertainties. This technology on the only throughway in Big Sur, I feel could present them with a feeling of more uncertainty in their community. So I just want to piggyback on what Rachel said, and I think it would be really nice if we could communicate this with all members of the community just to make sure that they're aware of the technology, and if there are any uncertainties on their part, they can share feedback. So Cabs, if you do that, would you be able to create a Zoom link so that people on the South Coast also could log in to hear more about this?
Yes. I see thumbs up. I don't know if you can see that, but they're
Okay.
on. They're on.
Okay, perfect.
And,
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry that Mauricio has jumped off, but at the BSMAC, Assemblymember Addis made a pretty specific set of comments about the work the state is doing to ensure the same kinds of privacy that we've been talking about. In particular, I think the Assemblymember cited the concern that immigration status can become a felony if it isn't already, and that could compromise people's ability to be confident that they weren't going to get caught up in some kind of access from, say, the federal government, who might come in and say, we need this data to address some kind of priority of theirs. So the Assembly member talked about some legislation that is being introduced in California to help with that issue specifically throughout the state. And sorry, Mauricio's not here. You could tell me a little more about it because my notes don't reflect it. I just was very much taken with the notion that our state representatives are actively engaging in trying to support this as being a useful tool without compromising people's safety. It sounded so informed and so specific. I just wanted to highlight that and say that you're having some kind of a community meeting, perhaps reaching out to, in particular, the assembly member's office, Mauricio might be able to help to explain some of the things that are going on at the state level might be helpful and reassuring. And I think that Supervisor Daniel's office might talk a little bit about the things that the county can do and what they are doing, because I know the county is also interested and concerned. It was an interesting meeting, and I thought these kinds of things where people were able to engage so specifically were kind of heartening. We hadn't had a lot of that recently, and this BSMAC really helped me to feel like the BSMAC is doing more of what it should do. I saw people solving problems right there, and that was one of them. Was as we worked through this to talk a little more about it. One of the things that I found a little bit entertaining was the expression of the concern, the law enforcement concern that we didn't want to tell people where the cameras were in case they took alternate routes. I said, yeah, okay, there's not a lot of alternate routes in that specific.
I appreciate your comment too about Pfeiffer Beach. That was you, right?
Yeah.
That was.
Is there anything more about cameras? I want to thank you. I mean, it's
Thank
really
you.
been,
We want to work with you guys on this.
it flooded my inbox and I didn't know quite what to do with that. And it really has helped to have a way to address it openly and transparently and kind of get us back on track. And I hope in the larger sense to inform any future process that we might want to go through. What else did I say? We had on the list there that I have the, we're putting the Sycamore Canyon entrance question to Caltrans. Maybe we could ask that you could take a look and tell us about it for the next meeting, if there's any thinking about that. We heard from Mr. Stevens about what's coming up to the Coastal Commission in this particular set of meetings it's in Santa Cruz, is that right? So it's the meeting that we get that's close of the Coastal Commission, if anybody wants to go there. And the discussion of the larger fire clearance projects that are being sort of coordinated by the Big Sur Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department, and where it intersects the highway management has to do with wanting to, and it's the land use plan, it's everything, wanting to facilitate people doing the fire clearance around structures and infrastructure without, well, with the minimal impact to the driving experience and the critical abuse check. We want to kind of navigate the question of making people, I think actually Laura and Dan testified that there was fire clearance that they wanted to do because the fire people came and told them to do it, but the county told them that they would need a permit to do it, and that was off-putting. So they in fact had chosen not to do that at this time because of the deterrent of that. Or similarly, other people who say a permit is needed, we don't need no permit, and they go and do the fire clearance they think is necessary regardless of any other consideration. So I just want to put out there that I'm extremely open to people's thoughts about how to bring those priorities together so that we can consider all of them. And it's fire, it's sensitive habitat, and it's the view shed. So that we can, again, like punching jello, figure out a way to help people do the right thing without having to break the law, at the same time protect the values that we took on the stewardship of when we didn't let this area become federalized. To go back in time, right? Right, we have to do the work now that we said we're gonna. And so I'm looking for help, and from that, in that perspective, I'm looking for help because we're involved now in working on the land use update and the land use plan update, which allows us to consider specific language to address those things, which we haven't yet found. I mean, a lot of people have been trying, but we're hopeful that we can get some help from the Coastal Commission to work through that, but we also need help from the community. And so thoughts appreciated on that topic. And I was glad that we heard a lot more about the fire clearance effort, which was exciting, but did not immediately relevant to the byways. And I certainly hope that people who are interested in that will contact Big Sur Fire, look at their presentation. I'm sure CABS can help you through the FABS program to learn more about it. There are opportunities for individuals as well as organizations and agencies in that description. So it was very inspirational to me, and I hope everybody else will have a chance to do that. Any further questions, comments? John?
Just a comment, after the big Bismack meeting, I think it was Monday, I was trying to find it on my email. But someone shared with me some very recent statement, executive order by the governor executive order. That was about this topic as well, so I shared that with, Matt Harris and Kate Daniels, I think they had heard about it too, so. And it directly related to this topic of emergency clearance for power wildfire.
Yeah, we all got that note, and I know Supervisor Daniels's office is trying to understand it better because the outcome was that it left a great deal of the discretion to the county. And so that needs to be explored in terms of, the governor's order was removing environmental oversight and other restrictions to facilitate fire clearance. And on the face of it, it looks like anything goes. But when you actually read the document, it's not quite that. It still leaves protections in place at the local level if necessary. So I know that her office is engaged in understanding better what that is and then looking at what the county's role remains or continues to be in that setting. But yeah, there's it's a moving platform. Things keep going, and hopefully our state representatives can talk as well. Steve?
This is difficult. I'm a member of the Big Sur LUAC. But you know, what Cal Fire put out years ago, delineating different zones from a house. And then they have some nice graphics. If you look at those, a yard around a house looks like a normal yard. The changes are fairly small. It's just, you know, it's about not having understory fuels and et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. Also in Big Sur, if you think of Otter Cove, or Sea Meadows, those are not an area where you're gonna have a wildfire. You're just not. You know, I've seen lots of fires in Big Sur and they come roaring down to about 500 feet and generally put themselves out, and the Cal Fire people are working desperately to try and burn it down to the highway, and it's difficult to burn. What I'm saying is that to come up with a rule for Big Sur that includes Sea Meadows and the top of Partington is kind of crazy. Also, people will use fire clearance to create vistas and views. They just will. You know, they'll cut down Division Knoll is a good example. It used to be pretty well hidden. You drive down the highway, you wouldn't see it. And now you see it from miles in either direction. I don't know, you know, there are so many with these things. I wish that there was a knowledgeable person that could simply come out from the county just for a visit and take a look and say, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want. You know, it's not a problem. Or you might have problems here with your neighbors, with whoever. And so we need to go a little further in the investigation and or regulations. And it has to do with a lot of other things. There's a project coming up where somebody's replacing a 5,000 gallon water tank. And they're getting a coastal development permit to do that. That's crazy.
At the risk of getting a little bit geeky here, the fire information continues to change. And so it's the old Cal Fire booklet may not be entirely relevant anymore. And I would bring to your attention the Colorado fire, which burned right through down to the ocean. People on the west side as well had to pay attention to that.
Good point.
And I've always been able to see Division Knoll, but then I have property right next door, so it's the reflections that get me. But just the changing nature of fire in our area is really visible and really important. And So we've gotta have enough flexibility to address the changes that are happening to us. It's not the old fires, this is different. Anyway, but yes, your point is well taken, everything is not the same. But if you're gonna do something that requires flexibility with policies, though, then you have to involve a third party, which means a permit, which means that the landowner is once again burdened with additional costs and energy and concerns. And they then doesn't facilitate the fire clearance we're telling them that they not only should do, but that they now must do. If not for the state law or their insurance, it's not fair to tell people on one hand, you have to do something, on the other hand, you can't do something. So we gotta figure that one out. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much about that, but it's in my head. We've been working so hard on it. And it's really hard to do. But Coastal Commission has said that they'll bring their experts in and we'll be able to have some working sessions and maybe come up with some new ideas. You know, sometimes you get caught in your own head when you don't get some new input. So again, I welcome anybody saying anything. I think that's my list from the BSMAC. Anybody else with a BSMAC conversation? I think that with respect to the cameras, good outcome. We have a moving forward and action that we can help with some more community outreach and discussion. I think that actually is significant. That brings us to member comments, requests, and referrals, some of which we kind of covered. I think we put the Sycamore Canyon entrance already on our future list. And so I'm just gonna actually go around the table here with the member comments, requests, and referral, which I'm gonna fold in with any committees that you want to talk about that you may be involved in. So let's start with.
Sure. I think, you know, from the business community standpoint, I think we've covered some relevant issues in previous conversations here today, so nothing particularly to add there.
The Forest Service team.
Just want to circle back really briefly to the pampas grass. I just want everyone to know Forest Service isn't ignoring the issue. We're aware of it on our lands that we manage. We're currently in communication with our regional office to sort of develop a plan to come up with that. We're not quite sure on what strategy that might be yet, but we might be looking to state parks as a good example. But we're
Possibly a partner?
Or a partner, yes.
Yeah, maybe so. Sign them up for your committee.
I like it.
Super. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's it for us.
Thanks. John?
Yeah, look forward to getting this committee back up and running, for the invasive species. And, you know, we've been very busy since our last meeting. Visitation is up in all of our park units. And, especially over the Christmas and New Year holiday period, just at Point Lobos, we had record numbers of attendance. Every holiday we get to, we see record numbers. So we're continuing with looking at strategies and projects to improve that situation, specifically at Point Lobos, and working with Monterey County and Coastal Commission. And then all the way down the coast, you know, the visitors, especially with what we're seeing statewide and even nationally, visitation is way up within our park units. And it is a challenge, but want to recognize all the staff that are involved with keeping our parks safe and clean and open. So that's my general update.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Is there any way to quantify the number of visits to the park units that, I assume there's something for Point Lobos, but for the park units that don't have an ongoing presence at the front gate? Do we have any idea how many people are using those different units? Because if we did, we'd love to see that.
Yeah, each park is different. You know, we have really good numbers at Point Lobos or Pfeiffer or JP Burns. Garrapata is a challenge just because we don't have a dedicated parking lot. We do have trail cameras and trail counters that are set up throughout some of our major trailheads. So we do have that data that I'm happy to share.
I think use data would be informative, particularly going forward, so I appreciate that.
Just
further, I'll take it as a team.
Yeah, just a quick update on state parks law enforcement for you guys. We are doing pretty good despite some department challenges with funding. We have, full staffing for the first time in Big Sur as far as rangers go in many years. Two supervisors and 6 patrol for 8. All of those officers are dedicated to Big Sur. We're gonna be working over the next couple months ahead of summer on trying to do some directed enforcement efforts on illegal camping up and down the coast on our property at hours that we're normally not out. And some resource related efforts as well. Again, trying to get out at times that we're normally not on patrol. So I wanted to share that with this group, that we're taking the feedback we're getting about illegal camping on the highway, particularly in our park areas. And resources, crimes that are occurring maybe in the middle of the night when there's not much law enforcement out there. We're gonna try to be getting out there. So.
Thanks. John, anything else?
Just mention, I made an appeal, as I did in Bismax in the past, to continue to solicit support for this group, for the byways from the public. So I'll make that again, please remind your friends, neighbors, and otherwise, and associates that this is, we've all heard the value of the conversation today, and to be able to have more people in the room to share that with. And it's an opportunity to give the agencies more input as well. There's many times that Bismack takes a life of its own and kind of, it directs its way that it's gonna go, but here, we can stop, pause, and really talk, a little more thoroughly about some of the issues and really take up more legitimate action items. So make that appeal as well. And the other thing I'll mention is, just in the light of visitor management and, one of, there are still small handful of existing visitor management type of plans that exist. There's the Destination Stewardship Plan, which is on the Byways website. I think I recently was sitting next to Finn Eifert a few times. US Forest Service has a visitor management plan. I don't know if that's what it's called or not. And before the pandemic, Caltrans, I got to finish the Transportation Demand Management Plan, which is more transportation focused and parking and this and that. So we have a good handful of data sets that's helpful as well. The data maybe gets stale, but the principles and the ideals are still there and helpful. So just remind everyone that's all available, and if there's questions, we can bring them back up.
Gotta keep saying, some data is better than none. So I really appreciate that, and we continue to look towards anybody who's doing work, who is collecting information that informs about the use of the area. All of that information is really helpful, because we're making decisions. It's better if we have something solid to base them on. Mary, you want to talk anything about Alyssa? No? Okay, I'm gonna go to Sarah. Sarah, do you have any items to bring forward?
Yeah, one thing does come to mind. I think this is for Caltrans. There's the seawall being built. We call it Alder Creek. I think that Caltrans has a different name for the site. And it's the one that requires all of the big rocks coming from Mount Madonna and the other big quarry. Just wondering if you know the timeline for that project and when it might be completed.
I'll specifically follow up, Sarah, with you. It's not too far off. It's close. We call that show, that work. And some of the boulders, some of the size of the boulders that have come in are just been immense. And some of the material is coming more locally, San Luis Obispo County, and some of the material is coming in from other quarries too. But it's not too far off, but I'll have to find the exact timeline to get to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
I think that comes back to me. So I hear from everybody all up and down the coast, and most recently, as I said at the beginning, I've received several phone calls and a letter from Sanfar about fundamentally overall issues, but a lot of them South Coast issues. I'd like to bring his letter to the attention of the group, and one of the things that he is passionate about, that he will continue to be passionate about, I'm sure, as long as he is with us, is undergrounding of utilities to improve the view. He believes that that's one of the single most effective things that would do the work that we promised to do to try to improve existing degraded view sheds. So I'd like to put on our radar some discussions of potentials for undergrounding and understanding of who all might be involved in any, but pushing forward that issue, perhaps to a future agenda. So we can kind of brainstorm around that, possibly reach out to PG&E and the utility folks about opportunities to partner and see if that's something that we can discuss and find out what the opportunities are there. The other things in that item, many of them I think were already covered in the meeting, but certainly would suggest that that's a way to get something on the agenda, but it's easier to do if it comes further ahead of the meeting, so we can discuss how to do that. One of the things that's been brought forward to me continually has been the issue of the expansion of roadside parking. We have a land use plan and a CHMP discussion of how parking should be managed. At the same time, I've heard in separate settings, other representatives of Caltrans, not John, I'm definitely not John, talk about Caltrans having a mandate to expand parking opportunities along highways, which is not the case here. We have a lot of information about, in our plans, we have a lot of intention around not expanding shoulders, not expanding parking without an intentional discussion of how to do that, not opening recreation areas that require expanded parking, particularly along the highway where it affects the viewshed. So I'd like to ask that we put on our agenda a discussion of what the status is of roadside parking that exists now, and this of course feeds into the discussions of safety and the choke points. Because where we have created expanded parking opportunities, often due to necessary work, for Caltrans and state parks both do work that requires additional areas for their work to occur. My understanding from the plans as I read them is those should be then ensured that they don't become ad hoc parking unless appropriate process has been gone through to establish them as parking. Because what we're getting, Lobos being a great example, we get ad hoc parking that has not been evaluated, that results in safety issues, and the fact that people are doing it, it continues to expand it time and time again. It's happened in most of our choke points. And oftentimes it's if somebody's cleared the weeds, somebody's done drainage work, those areas then become visitor parking without any way for the visitors to then move from there to an appropriate location for them. So I'd like to have an agenda item that talks about the status of roadside parking and the potential to look at where the shoulders have been expanded and then turned into ad hoc parking. As well as some input about whether those areas affect either the viewshed or public safety. Because parking that hasn't been evaluated, I mean, Soberanis, the south end of Soberanis is a really good example of that. At the Knoll, Whalers Knoll there, there's some parking that I have had too many close calls on personally, and I know others have said that as well. So that's something that keeps coming to me from my own experience and from other people's comments. I did get a lot of comments about the issues at Point Lobos over the recent holiday and the extensive amount of east side parking that try to put us back into the old situation where there was no room for people to move, and that was a problem. I did hear from the Parkit people that they would love to keep us up to date on the Parkit project as that becomes appropriate, and that it wasn't yet, but they hope to have some more to talk about in the future, and they'll come forward and ask to be on the agenda if I'm sure nobody has any huge problems with that. Then I do want to highlight that we continue to have vacancies on the byways in the resident side. And I'm sorry, Mark isn't here. He's not a vacancy really. He's just only a temporary vacancy. But as it stands right now, we have the vacancy for Big Sur proper and for the at-large representative. And Steve, who attends all our meetings anyway, has expressed interest in the Big Sur proper position, and I forwarded that to Supervisor Daniels, and I don't know if she has other people interested, but we're hoping that we'll be able to fill that slot because we have a candidate, qualified candidate, soon. And then the at-large spot, I just want to share that I spoke to Supervisor Daniels about the possibility of moving my position from mid-coast to at-large, because I know there's a lot of interest in the mid-coast to represent that area specifically that may not be from people who are well placed to look at the at-large situation. I kind of get that at-large information anyway. So if she's amenable, we may be looking for either an at-large person or a Midcoast person, and I have suggested that it would be for a new Midcoast representative if I were to transition, however the process requires, to at-large. So again, that's just me talking to the supervisor. Anybody has any other ideas, I'm glad to hear them. I know she would as well. And if you know somebody who's interested in serving in whatever capacity, please let us know so we can get hold of those people and interact with them. Before we go, that's all the members, but I want to just ask, we got law enforcement camp here today. Y'all got anything that you want to add? You have been remarkably silent, voting today.
Just taking notes, Martha. There's always things that kind of pop up in my head, as everybody kind of brainstorms and talks about different issues. Let's see if there's anything here that might be applicable. I guess one of the things recently, roadside camping. I know this is a big topic, and previously in the meeting, it was addressed that some of the signage was going to be reduced along the highway. And I understand that from an enforcement standpoint, signage is a wonderful tool when I'm not there to educate and as necessary to enforce. So I think if signage is going to be removed, and I don't know what that means, one of my questions, I guess, would be for the forum, whether this is the correct location or not for it, would be who placed the roadside camping signs, and whoever did, whether that has to be that agency or maybe another, if those signs can be placed in a manner like speed limit signs. One of the common things that I think we can all attest to is when you drive down the coast, I believe there's 5 signs that say roadside camping. Could be wrong, it's just a number that popped up in my head, but almost all of them are faced in a perpendicular manner to the highway itself. Minus the one at the Carmel River Bridge, which in my opinion is overshadowed by the big, large TMC billboard that's flashing the message about the highway being closed. Related, but aside from that, those signs, if they can be placed in a manner where a general motorist going down the highway is going to recognize them easily. Again, I know sign placage, sign volume, those are all topics. I don't believe they're in the best situation. I think the message can be put out there more effectively by just placing them more like a speed limit type sign. So, and I've got other notes that I would talk about with individual people afterwards, or maybe in additional meetings in the future, but that's just something that I kind of got thought about more when the signage issue was brought up. So again, whether that's county, state, whoever's responsible for that, if that's possible, I think that would be quite helpful.
Thanks. Anybody else over there? No, I see a resounding silence. Anybody on Zoom would like to comment on that, or for that matter, anything at this point?
Actually, Martha, I'm sorry, I did have one other thing that I just put in my notes here. This got brought up, I believe, initially when Rocky Creek went out, and we were having the messaging issue with tourists coming down the coast, not knowing that the highway was closed, and it didn't really get a whole lot of follow-up after it was brought to some people's attention. No fault of their own. I think it's kind of a big picture item. I don't know if this is possible, but knowing that this is the history of Big Sur, whether it's fires, landslides, or bridges, needing replaced and that sort of stuff. An idea that I'd had, and again, there's quite intelligent people here in the room as well as online that may have thought of this previously, but we have a system in place, and this might be for Cal OES or somebody else, at a state level, but we have a system in place when there's amber alerts, when there's tsunami warnings, those type of scenarios where a phone can receive messages at various locations for specific, I believe it would be like emergency type of issues. Is there a way possible for us to be able to utilize that system that may already be in place for tourists in their possible native language that come down the coast that receive information possibly supplementing or replacing some of the signage so that they're clear that they're coming up on an area that has restricted access, that there is no detour, or something along those lines. So that was just something that I thought about, and it was warmly received, but I'm not sure if that's something that we might be able to look at moving forward, because there is the language barrier and because cell phone communication is such an issue once you come south of the Highlands, that if there's still a way that we all as locals can get tsunami warnings or earthquake warnings, is it possible to utilize that system or a similar system to be able to get this information out to motorists? So that way they have it on their phone when they pass the geographical location.
Interesting. The people nodding their heads.
Not looking for an answer, but just throwing it out there for.
Well, I know too that there, at one point, when I went into Nevada, I would get a welcome to Nevada text. I don't know if that still happens, but when I crossed the state line, I would receive a text for that too, so there's probably some means to look at that.
I think, one of the biggest challenges there is cell signals, the ability for, someone traveling Highway 1 to receive that through their phone. I would be concerned if that notification, that messaging happened too far away. If we have to, people receive this notification that there's an issue with Highway 1 farther south when they're still in Carmel. And again, there's a lot of confusion about, people don't know how far 25 miles is. People don't know how far a quarter of a mile is anymore because we all rely on our GPS to guide us. And so people don't understand that I can still go do the things I was planning on doing and I'm sorry, buy a hamburger at the River Inn. They will, I wouldn't want to see something that discouraged people from continuing their journey to where they actually can get. And I think that locating those notifications in the best locations is going to be a challenge because of cell signals.
It made me think of something different, which was my car now tells me what the speed limit is every time I go by a sign. So there's a way somehow technologically to give location specific information somehow to something that doesn't, and that's not self.
That must be satellite, yeah.
And so I don't know what it is, but it's just crossed my mind that I'm getting that when I'm not within cell phone range and I'm getting it immediate to the area that I'm exactly in. So that just, I don't know whether it's even relevant. Are you leaning forward to talking? No, you're leaning forward to the back, that's sore because it's after 12. I just want to check with the people online to see if there's anything they want to say in closing, maybe something we should take up at another meeting. Sarah, you didn't have anything? You were looking on your window.
I was just gonna say that my car does that too, but it's because there's a camera on the windshield. So I don't know if that could play into it, or maybe we just have two different technologies on our cars, but mine takes like a picture of the speed limit sign and then projects it into my dashboard.
Mine comes up as a number, but I'm sure it's the same kind of a thing. I don't know, but it's a new thing to me and there's technology involved. And so maybe there's a hope for that. I'm not seeing.
Yeah, I like that idea though.
Yeah, nobody else's hands up. And that being the case, I think our next meeting, when is our next meeting, Taylor? June 18th, 2025. Can you even imagine? That will be during the summer, so we will have anticipated summer issues, such as they are. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come, and hope we use your time wisely. And there's lots to do going forward.
Thanks, Martha.
I'm about to, they're telling me now I need to adjourn.
Just formally, just.
That being the case, I'm not even gonna take a motion, but I don't have to, just because Jimmy says you have to. I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 12:10. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Robert, so there you go.